Why Harley-Davidson failed in India. Imagine a legendary motorcycle brand entering a market widely expected to soon become the largest motorcycle market in the world. On paper, this sounds like a golden opportunity too good to pass up. But more than a decade later, this brand had only managed to sell around 27,000 motorcycles across the entire country, a number that didn't even match the monthly sales of their biggest local competitor. This is the story of Harley-Davidson in India. But interestingly, this story doesn't just end in total failure. There's a fairly surprising second act, one that proves the real problem was never whether Indians wanted this brand, but how they were being sold it. In this video, we're breaking down why Harley-Davidson failed so badly in India for a full decade, and how they eventually found the right formula through a completely different approach. Harley-Davidson India began operations in August 2009 as a wholly owned subsidiary headquartered in Gurgaon, Haryana. They entered what many at the time expected would soon become the world's largest motorcycle market. This was a moment full of major optimism. India, with its massive population and continuously growing motorcycle market, looked like an extremely promising opportunity for any premium motorcycle brand looking to expand its global reach. But the core problem Harley-Davidson faced in India was actually deeply structural. In the year they launched, more than 17 million two-wheelers were sold in India, and 90% of them were powered by engines under 150 cubic centimeters. Meanwhile, the smallest motorcycle Harley offered in the country came with a 750 cubic centimeter engine. Just imagine this gap, a market dominated by small, efficient motorcycles built for everyday transportation needs, while Harley's cheapest product was still far bigger and far more expensive than what the vast majority of Indian consumers were actually looking for. This wasn't just a matter of preference alone. It was a fundamental mismatch between what the market majority needed and what Harley was offering from the very first day they entered this country. Harley-Davidson's price range in India stretched from roughly 5.3 lakh rupees to 50.3 lakh rupees, a price range far, far out of reach for the mass market in that country. This pricing problem was made even worse by a heavy tax structure, a 28% GST rate plus an additional 3% cess on top of already high import tariffs from the start. Every layer of tax and duty made each motorcycle unit even more expensive for Indian consumers to buy. Imagine this combination from a consumer's perspective. A motorcycle with an engine far bigger than their everyday needs, at a price already expensive to begin with, then further stacked with layers of tax that made the final price even more unaffordable. This is a combination that's nearly impossible to sell to a mass market. Adding to the pain of this pricing problem, many customers felt that Harley-Davidson's suspension and chassis simply weren't tuned for India's pothole-ridden, uneven road conditions. This is a fairly fatal problem, as it directly undermines the riding experience that was supposed to justify the brand's premium price. Consumers who had already paid an extremely high price should have gotten a riding experience to match that price. But if a motorcycle isn't designed with actual local road conditions in mind, the riding experience ends up being less satisfying instead. A contradiction that's hard to explain to consumers who've already paid a premium price. While Harley struggled, Royal Enfield, with roots planted in India dating back to 1949, remained the dominant force in this segment. The numbers comparison is fairly striking. While Harley only managed to sell about 27,000 units over an entire decade, Royal Enfield sold twice that amount every single month. Just imagine the scale of this difference. What Harley achieved in 10 years, Enfield achieved in under half a month. This shows just how deep Royal Enfield's advantage was, not just about a more affordable price, but also about a deep understanding of the local market built up over decades, long before Harley even considered entering India. Auto experts also pointed to a fairly significant strategic failure. Competitors like Triumph and KTM partnered with Bajaj Auto, while BMW Motorrad teamed up with TVS Motor, letting them tap into established local manufacturing and distribution. But Harley chose to operate alone, in what was described as glorious isolation. Looking at the final outcome, this decision proved to be a fairly major strategic mistake. Without a local partner who genuinely understood the ins and outs of manufacturing and distribution in India, Harley lost access to the cost efficiencies and networks that could have come from a partnership like that. Ironically, as we'll see shortly, it was exactly this kind of local partnership that would eventually become the key to their comeback. It just took them more than a decade to realize it. The situation in India was also compounded by broader pressures Harley-Davidson was facing globally. In 2019, they shipped just 213,939 motorcycles worldwide, their lowest total in 9 years. This also coincided with their worst net income in nearly a decade, just $423 million. Then the pandemic hit, driving their first quarterly loss after 37 straight quarters of positive results. Just imagine the pressure the company was under at this point. Not just problems specific to the Indian market, but also far broader global challenges, forcing them to reevaluate their entire operational strategy across multiple countries. In the final stretch of their operations, Harley's sales figures in India became increasingly grim. They only managed to sell about 2,676 motorcycles in India during fiscal year 2019, and a mere 100 units between April and June of 2020. These numbers made their ambitions of cracking the Indian market look increasingly hopeless. Just imagine the scale of this decline. From the massive optimism at launch back in 2009, down to just 100 units sold in a 3-month period, 11 years later. In September 2020, as part of a global restructuring plan called Rewire, Harley-Davidson officially announced it would shut down its manufacturing operations in India. This move was part of a broader retreat from roughly 40 global markets Harley deemed unprofitable. This was a fairly major admission that the glorious isolation strategy they had run for an entire decade ultimately proved unsustainable from a business standpoint. But interestingly, this wasn't a full walkout from the Indian market. Instead of leaving entirely, Harley struck a distribution and licensing agreement with Hero MotoCorp, India's largest two-wheeler maker. This agreement let Hero import and sell Harley motorcycles under this new partnership. This was an implicit acknowledgement of the strategic mistake we discussed earlier, that a partnership with a local player who genuinely understood this market was exactly the key they should have leveraged from the start. This partnership eventually produced something fairly interesting, the Harley-Davidson X440, a locally developed motorcycle. When Hero opened bookings for this bike, demand proved overwhelming. More than 25,500 orders came in, with over 65% of buyers choosing the top-end variant priced at 269,000 rupees. This is extremely strong, fairly surprising proof. Harley had actually never misjudged India's appetite for their brand. What was wrong was the size and price of the motorcycles they had insisted on selling in that country all along. Once they finally offered a product with a more realistic engine size and a far more affordable price, developed together with a local partner who genuinely understood the market, the demand that had been hidden all along was finally revealed clear as day. So what's the big lesson we can take from Harley-Davidson's long journey in India? For an entire decade, Harley assumed their brand strength alone would be enough to break into the Indian market, without genuinely adapting their product to the needs and financial capacity of the majority of consumers in that country. They also chose to operate alone, instead of leveraging local partnerships that had already proven successful for their competitors. But the X440 story proves something extremely important. Harley's early failure in India didn't mean Indians didn't want this brand. The problem was far more specific. An engine size mismatched with the majority of market needs, unaffordable pricing driven by a combination of product strategy and tax structure, and the absence of a local partnership that could have helped adapt the product to market reality. This is an extremely valuable reminder. Sometimes a brand's failure in a particular market doesn't mean that market doesn't want them. It means they haven't yet found the right way to genuinely serve that market. And sometimes it takes more than a decade and the right partnership to finally find that formula. If you enjoy global business case studies like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss other case studies on global business successes and failures. See you in the next video.